The scent of cigars and champagne clung to the air like arrogance. Garrett never knew when enough was enough. His 50th birthday looked more like a senator's fundraiser than a family gathering Crystal Lights valet lines and enough fake smiles to light up the whole estate. I adjusted my cuffs, trying not to tug at the suit that still felt foreign on me, even after all these years. I only came because of a promise I made to my mother. "Show up when it counts," she said, "even when it hurts." Jules spotted me before I reached the veranda. Her smile was too polished to be real. She floated over cocktail in hand, voice sweet and sharp all at once. "Evan, Garrett wants to see you something about the car." Of course he did. I followed her through the maze of party-goers, dodging perfume clouds, and raised eyebrows until I found him Garrett, basking in attention as usual. Next to him stood Walter Klein, his so-called branding advisor. Always talking, always circling. Garrett didn't even say hello. "That supercar you built, we want it in the Maddox Mobility campaign. It's the perfect showpiece." I narrowed my eyes. "It's not for sale." Garrett chuckled, waving me off like I was joking. "Not selling, Evan. Think branding, legacy. It'll still be yours on paper." Walter stepped closer. "We'd register it to the company. Keep it in the fleet. Win-win." I looked at them both and said at once, "No." Silence rippled. The jazz behind us seemed to fade. "You're being emotional," Walter snapped. "I'm being clear," I replied. That's when he grabbed the bottle. It moved so fast I didn't register the swing, only the crack, the rush of cold bubbles and heat across my scalp. My knees buckled, and the taste of copper filled my mouth. No one moved. No one helped. I pressed my hand to my head and felt the blood. Garrett just stared. Jules took a sip of her drink like she hadn't seen a thing. I straightened, pulled a handkerchief from my pocket, and wiped the mess from my brow. "Happy birthday," I said flatly, and I walked out, alone. The wound wasn't deep, but it pulsed with a quiet insistence like it didn't want to be forgotten. I stood in the bathroom mirror under dim light, dabbing the cut with hydrogen peroxide. It fizzed, then stung. I didn't flinch. Not after what happened. Not after the way they all just stood there. The handkerchief I used at the party was ruined. I dropped it into the trash along with the blood-stained shirt. No detergent would lift that red bloom off the fabric. Some things don't come out no matter how hard you scrub. I brewed coffee I wouldn't drink and sat on the floor of my apartment back against the wall, the faint throb at my temple matching the tick of the clock. I reached for the box I hadn't touched in months. It held everything, sketches, invoices, the build specs for the car I'd spent 3 years perfecting. I ran my fingers over the grainy paper. I remembered each part by touch, the twin-turbo V8, the custom chassis, the stitched leather interior I hand-fitted myself. The title was folded at the bottom just beneath an old photo of my dad in his shop coat. I pulled it out and laid it flat. That's when I saw it. A signature. My signature. But I didn't remember signing this version. The date was off by 2 weeks, and the registration line listed Maddox Mobility LLC as a co-owner. That was never part of the plan. Not mine, anyway. My name was scrawled in cursive, the same loops and slant I'd used since high school, but there was something wrong. Too neat, like someone had practiced it. I stared at the paper, my mouth suddenly dry. I flipped through the rest of the file. Newer copies, different headers, even a VIN number update request, none of which I'd filed. My fingers tightened on the edge of the document. They hadn't just tried to take the car at that party. They'd been planning to own it for weeks, maybe months, without telling me. Probably thought I'd never notice, that I'd just keep showing up like the dumb little brother too sentimental to ask questions. I looked down at the bruise blooming on my temple in the mirror's reflection. They should have made sure I stayed unconscious. It took exactly 7 minutes on hold before someone at the DMV picked up. I gave them the VIN waited while they clicked through their system and forced my voice to stay even. "Looks like the co-ownership was filed 2 weeks ago," the woman said casually. "Under Evan Maddox and Maddox Mobility, LLC. Effective immediately. Can you confirm the signature date? Signed the 8th, processed the 10th. You should have received a confirmation by mail." "I didn't." She paused. "Maybe check with the co-owner. Sometimes business mail gets rerouted." I thanked her and hung up. My hand was trembling. I reached for the envelope I remembered seeing in the pile of unopened mail on the counter. There it was, a sleek black envelope, no return address, the company logo embossed in silver. I tore it open. Inside, a glossy folder with a letter from Garrett's PR team welcoming me to the Brand family. A thank you note for donating the car to a greater legacy. My own name typed beneath a forged signature. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my desk drawer, pulled out an old leather-bound address book, and flipped to the V's. Vale Hudson. He was retired now, lived out near Fredericksburg. Used to be my father's personal counsel, the kind of lawyer who smoked cigars in silence and scared the hell out of anyone in a suit. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but this wasn't just family drama anymore. I dialed the number. The phone rang twice before a gravel-coated voice answered. "Hudson Vale. Hudson. It's Evan Maddox." A beat of silence. Then, well, I'll be damned. "What's your old man's son doing calling a relic like me?" I swallowed. "I think someone forged my name. On my car title. Might be more than that." Another pause. A shift in tone. "You got documents?" "Yes." "Then come see me. Today." As I ended the call, I looked around my apartment at the blueprints, the certificates, the boxes of careful documentation I thought had protected me. Every detail I'd built was being stolen, one forged signature at a time. And for the first time I wondered how many papers with my name weren't mine at all. Hudson's place smelled like wood polish and pipe tobacco, just like I remembered. The books lining the walls hadn't moved in a decade, and neither had he. It seemed same gray suspenders, same sharp eyes that didn't miss a thing. He took the manila folder from me like it weighed more than it did, flipping through the documents without a word. He didn't say anything for a long time, just made that low hum of his, the one that meant something wasn't right. "This signature," he muttered, tapping the title form. "Sloppy forgery. Looks good to the untrained eye, but your father would have spotted it blind." I leaned forward. "So I'm not crazy." "Oh, you're definitely being played, but that's not the part that's got me stirred up." He reached beneath his desk and pulled out an ancient accordion folder, the edges yellowed, like it had soaked in time. "You remember this? I didn't." Until he flipped open the flap and slid out a single legal sheet, the kind with embossed seals and signatures that meant something. "Your father's estate plan," he said. "Drafted in 2005. Updated in 2012, the year before he passed." I scanned the page, not sure what I was looking for until I saw it. Beneficiary of the Highland property, Evan Maddox. Not Garrett, not Jules. Me. What they never filed the transfer. "Your dad left it to you outright, but your mother was grieving, and Garrett, well, he stepped in. Handled the logistics, or so he said. But the deed was never recorded with the county. Which means, legally, I looked up heart-hammering. I own that house." Hudson grinned, toothy and satisfied. "Every inch. Garrett and his lovely wife have been squatting, son. For nearly a decade." I sat back in the leather chair, the weight of it all pressing in from every side. The house I wasn't invited to anymore, the one where they threw their galas, their family fundraisers, the one I was too common for, was mine. They used it to make me feel small, and now it was the very ground they stood on, and they never saw me coming. The diner hadn't changed. Same red vinyl booths cracked at the seams, same flickering neon clock above the counter that always ran 10 minutes fast. Hudson sat in the back corner, fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug like he'd never left it. He didn't stand when I walked in, just nodded at the seat across from him. "Thought you might be bluffin'," he said. "But you showed." "I don't bluff," I replied, sliding into the booth. He handed me a folder before I could even ask. Inside were 3 neatly clipped packets, vehicle title discrepancies, property transfer violations, and trust account anomalies. It was like watching someone lay out blueprints for a demolition. "This is what they've touched so far," he said, tapping the edge of the folder, "and probably just the surface. You were the quiet one, but your dad never intended you to be the invisible one." I glanced up. "You're saying he told you, boy, he practically carved your name into the desk," Hudson snorted. "Said Garrett had the charm, but you had the spine. That house. That wasn't a reward. It was responsibility, and you were the only one he trusted not to ruin it." The waitress came and went, refilling his cup and leaving mine untouched. "I didn't have much of an appetite. Not for food, not for fury either. I don't want to ruin them," I said after a long silence. "I just want what's mine." Hudson nodded slowly. "Then we do it clean. No drama. We use the law. We'll file quiet, serve hard." He took out a pen and underlined something in red constructive eviction notice pending. "You ever served someone an eviction notice?" he asked. "No." "Feels weird the first time, but only the first." I sat back, letting the hum of the diner wash over me. Somewhere near the jukebox, a kid laughed. Outside, traffic rolled by like nothing was about to change, but everything was. This wasn't revenge. I wasn't throwing punches or starting fires. This was gravity. And once it started moving, they weren't going to stop it. Not this time. Not with lawyers, not with money, not even with blood. 3 weeks. That's how long it took Hudson to prepare everything: quiet filings, courthouse visits, notarized affidavits. No media, no theatrics, just clean, silent movement. So, when I pulled up to the Highland house in my truck, not the supercar, I knew exactly what I came to do. The gates creaked open like they hadn't been touched in years. A valet looked at me confused, then stepped back like he recognized something, maybe my face, or maybe the quiet in my eyes. Inside, they were waiting. Jules sat poised on the chaise, draped in soft cashmere and harder smiles. Garrett leaned against the mantel like he always did, posing as authority. And Iris, their mother, turned toward me with a softness I hadn't seen since I was 10. "Evan," she said gently, opening her arms. "You're here." I didn't hug her. I set the briefcase down on the coffee table, opened it, laid out the documents one by one: title deeds, trust certifications, court-validated eviction orders. Neat. Unmistakable. "What is this?" Jules asked, already standing. "The truth," I said. Garrett laughed, sharp and hollow. "You think you can walk in here, and I'm not walking in," I said, calm. "I'm walking back." Iris stepped closer. "Your father would never." I looked her in the eye. "He did. You just buried it." She touched my arm, voice dropping. "We're family, Evan. We can work this out." I pulled the notice from the folder and handed it to her. "You have 14 days. Her hand trembled. "You're taking everything." I shook my head. "No, I'm reclaiming what you never had." Garrett's fists curled. Jules turned pale. But I didn't need to shout. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the door behind me to stay open and the law to do what it was always meant to. I looked at Iris one last time and said it flat. "It's not theft if it's already mine." It started with a single headline on the business section: "Maddox Mobility faces internal investigation over title fraud allegations." By noon, it was everywhere. I sat on my couch in sweats and a faded t-shirt, a mug of coffee warming my hands, the volume on the TV low but steady. Garrett's face filled the screen, flushed slick with nervous energy. He stood behind a podium outside the Highland House, cameras flashing like judgment in light form. "We are cooperating fully with the inquiry," he said, eyes darting. "This is a misunderstanding. All transactions were transparent and legal." Next to him, Walter stared blankly ahead, jaw clenched like a man who had bet everything and was now waiting for the crash. I took another sip. By mid-afternoon, another report dropped. A whistleblower from inside the company, someone I'd never met, confirmed irregularities going back years, fake co-ownership titles, improper asset funneling, misuse of a family trust. Hudson had warned me once. When liars get greedy, they get lazy. Outside the mansion, Gates reporters now lined up like protesters. Drones hovered overhead. Neighbors peeked from behind Hedges' phones, filming every reaction. Inside my apartment, it was quiet. No door slams, no raised voices, just the soft clink of my spoon, stirring coffee I'd already forgotten to sweeten. My phone buzzed. I didn't answer. It buzzed again, Jules. Then Iris. I let them ring. Across the screen, Garrett kept talking, kept trying to spin, to smirk, to salvage, but you could see it in his shoulders, they were folding. Hudson texted me only 2 words. "It's unraveling." I looked out the window at the skyline, golden with early evening light. The supercar sat below in the garage, untouched, gleaming like a secret no one could ever steal again. They shouted into microphones. I didn't have to say a word. The mansion went on the market with barely a whisper. Hudson handled the paperwork. I never stepped foot inside it again. Didn't need to. I'd already taken what mattered: dignity, truth, closure. The rest was just walls and windows built on a lie. It sold faster than I expected. Cash buyer. No inspections. People love a story they think they're bigger than. But I already knew the headline I wanted. With the proceeds, I bought a dusty, shuttered vocational center on the east side of Austin, 4 empty bays, a cracked parking lot, a roof that leaked if you stood under it too long. I walked the property in the quiet and imagined what it could be. The Maddox Initiative, I decided. Not named for Garrett, not even for me, for my father, for the mechanic who taught me how to torque an engine before I could ride a bike, for the man who believed work wasn't dirty, it was honest, who always said, "Build with your hands and no one can take it." We gutted the place. I hired local contractors, pulled in a few former classmates, reached out to trade schools. We built classrooms, fitted new lifts, wired computer systems for diagnostics and hybrid engines, clean paint, clear glass, no family crests, just opportunity. When the first group of kids walked in, teenagers who'd been labeled problems everywhere else, I felt something shift. They looked around like they didn't quite believe it yet. "Can we really touch this stuff?" one asked, running a hand along a gleaming socket set. I nodded. "You can do more than touch it. You can master it." Outside, the supercar sat beneath a tarp in my garage. I never drove it again. Didn't need to. Some things aren't for movement. They're for memory. That car was never about speed or status. It was the symbol of everything they tried to take and everything they couldn't hold. Now it was a relic, a reminder, because the house they used to shame me funded a place where forgotten kids get to build something real. And the car they wanted, it was never the prize. It was always the key. The day she arrived, the shop smelled like motor oil and fresh paint. A new batch of students was tearing down a transmission, laughing louder than they probably should have been. I didn't mind. Noise like that meant something was working. She stepped into the bay like she'd been here before, old coat, white hair tucked into a scarf, a small leather purse clutched tight against her side. Her shoes clicked gently across the concrete until she reached me. "You must be Evan." Her voice was soft, but certain, the kind that didn't need to ask twice. "I am," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" She opened her purse, slowly, carefully, like whatever she was carrying wasn't light. "I worked with your father," she said. "Long time ago, back when he still took notes by hand and fixed cars like they were sacred." I smiled. "He never stopped doing either." She nodded, pulling out a small velvet pouch. "He gave me this, told me to hold it, said I'd know who it belonged to when the time came." She opened the pouch and placed a silver pocket watch in my palm. It was old, familiar, scratched but solid, my initials engraved on the back. I felt the weight of it settle into my hand like it had been waiting. "I thought it was lost," I whispered. She shook her head. "Your father said some things can't be stolen, only delayed." I looked at her, stunned. "Why me?" She smiled, kind, knowing. "Because he knew you'd build something that would outlast all of them. You weren't the spare. You were the seed." The watch ticked soft and steady, as if time hadn't stopped, but simply taken a breath. I offered her a seat. She sat near the windows, watching the students work, her eyes shining in the sunlit dust. "I'm glad he was right," she said. I didn't answer. I just nodded and clutched the watch tighter, the metal cool against my palm. Not all legacies come with names carved in stone. Some arrive quietly, returned not with noise but with faith that you were always meant to hold them. The ribbon fluttered in the morning breeze, stretched tight between two orange cones. Someone had spray-painted gold. Volunteers lined the walkway, clapping, grinning, wiping sawdust from their sleeves. Behind them the building gleamed with fresh paint and glass, so clean it disappeared into the sky. Hudson stood beside me, tie-crooked hair wind-blown, and eyes misty, though he'd never admit it. "Didn't think I'd live to see this," he muttered. "You almost didn't," I said. He chuckled and nudged my elbow. The crowd quieted. A teacher handed me the oversized scissors. I looked down at them for a beat, then glanced at the faces, watching kids, parents, neighbors, strangers who showed up just to believe in something. I cut the ribbon. The cheers came fast and full, echoing off the walls we rebuilt with our own hands. Children rushed inside, wide-eyed, already arguing over who got the tire-changing station first. Near the entrance, encased in glass, sat the silver pocket watch. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "For the ones who build forward." I didn't linger. I walked past it into the bay where fresh tools gleamed under fluorescent lights and oil hadn't yet stained the floor. A boy asked me how to hold a torque wrench. I knelt beside him and showed him. Because this was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming the blueprint and redrawing it from scratch. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone else sign my name.